My golden child sister turned my parents against me growing up and forced me to leave. When they tried to reconcile years later, it was already too late. I was 8 years old when my parents adopted Emily. Before she arrived, life was simple. My parents were strict but fair, and while they had high expectations, I felt loved. We had routines, family dinners, weekend outings, bedtime stories. I wasn't showered with affection, but I was secure in the knowledge that I mattered. I was their only child, and I had their full attention. But my parents always wanted a bigger family. They had struggled to conceive again and, after years of disappointment, decided to adopt. When Emily arrived, everything changed. She was 6, small and delicate with big, watery eyes that made adults instantly coo over her. The social worker had said she had been through so much that she needed love, stability, and a family to embrace her. And at first, I wanted to be that family. I wanted to be a good big sister. But from the very beginning, Emily was trouble. It started small, little lies, sneaky things only I noticed. She'd break something and blame it on me, and because she was the fragile, adopted child who had been through so much, my parents always believed her. If I protested, I was scolded for being insensitive. If I cried, I was told I should be more understanding of what Emily had been through. She just wants to feel safe, Mum would say. You need to be patient with her. At school, Emily played the same tricks. Teachers adored her, charmed by her innocent face and quiet demeanor. But behind closed doors, she was different. She would whisper cruel things to me when no one was listening, take my favorite belongings and deny it when I confronted her. If I retaliated, even slightly, she would run to my parents, sobbing, twisting the story to make me look like the bully. I quickly learned that fighting back wasn't worth it. By middle school, she had perfected her act. To teachers and classmates, she was the kind, shy girl who had endured hardship. To me, she was a master manipulator. She spread rumors about me in school, turning classmates against me with subtle, believable lies. She would claim I said something cruel about another student, or that I stole answers for a test. My parents never believed me when I tried to defend myself. Emily wouldn't lie, they insisted. She looks up to you. But she didn't look up to me, she wanted to replace me. And, in many ways, she did. As we grew up, it only got worse. Emily had a talent for manipulation. She was the kind of person who could cry on cue, turn any situation to her advantage, and somehow always land on her feet while I took the fall. She got away with skipping chores, sneaking out, and failing classes because she's been through so much. Meanwhile, I had to be the perfect child. Straight A's, no backtalk, always setting the example. And still, it was never enough. I wasn't blind. I knew she was the favorite. My parents might not have said it outright, but their actions screamed it. If Emily got in trouble at school, they rushed to defend her, blaming teachers or classmates. If I so much as sighed in annoyance at her, I was given a lecture about being grateful that I had a sister at all. By the time high school rolled around, the resentment between us was thick enough to choke on. Emily had mastered playing the golden child, and my parents saw only what they wanted to see. She would undermine me in ways so subtle that if I tried to call it out, I looked petty. She's always so mean to me, Emily would say, her voice trembling. She's lying. I'd snap, but my parents never wavered. Sarah, you need to grow up. She looks up to you, they'd say. I spent years swallowing my anger, forcing myself to be the daughter they expected, even as Emily chipped away at my sanity. But the breaking point came when I found out my college fund was gone. I had worked hard my entire life, determined to escape the suffocating home I lived in. I had the grades, the extracurriculars, the scholarships, but I still needed that college fund. It had been promised to me for years, money my grandparents had set aside specifically for my education. Except now, it was gone. We used it for Emily's tutoring, my father said when I confronted them. I thought I had misheard him. You what? Mom gave me her usual placating look. Sweetheart, Emily was struggling so much, and private tutors are expensive. She needed help. I stared at them, barely able to breathe. That money wasn't yours to take. My voice shook, years of frustration bubbling to the surface. It was for my future. Don't be dramatic, Mom said dismissively. You'll figure something out. You're smart. She needed it more than you did, Dad added, as if that was supposed to justify everything. The betrayal hit me so hard I felt dizzy. Every sacrifice I had made, every time I had bitten my tongue, every time I had let Emily take what should have been mine, it had all led to this. I hate you, I whispered. And I meant it. Mom gasped. Sarah, we are your parents. No, you're her parents, I cut in, pointing at Emily, who stood in the doorway with her usual smug expression. I'm just the afterthought. Dad's face darkened. If you can't accept your sister and our decisions, maybe you should leave. There it was. The final nail in the coffin. I packed my bags that night. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just left. The only person who opened their arms to me was my grandmother. She had seen the favoritism, the way my parents bent over backward for Emily while I was pushed aside. She welcomed me into her home without hesitation. It took years, but I found peace. My career flourished, and I built a circle of friends who felt more like family than my own ever had. I met mentors who supported me, colleagues who respected me, and people who truly saw me for who I was, not as a shadow to someone else, but as my own person. There was a moment in my journey when I realized just how far I had come. I had worked tirelessly in my chosen field, pushing myself past the limits of what I thought I was capable of. I had started from the bottom, juggling multiple jobs and barely scraping by. But eventually, my persistence paid off. One afternoon, I received an email from a major company in my industry. They had noticed my work and wanted to offer me an opportunity, a leadership position with a salary beyond anything I had ever imagined. My heart raced as I read the words over and over, unable to believe that this was real. I thought about my parents, about how they had dismissed my potential. How they had funneled everything into Emily, believing she was the one who deserved to succeed. And yet, here I was, proving them wrong without even trying. When I stepped into my new office on my first day, I took a deep breath and let it sink in. This was my success. My life. And no one, not my parents, not Emily, could take it away from me. Meanwhile, Emily's life took a turn. Without me around to bear the brunt of everything, the cracks in her carefully crafted golden child persona started to show. She burned through every opportunity my parents handed her, failing out of college despite the tutoring they had sacrificed so much for. She manipulated, lied, and took advantage until there was nothing left to take. My parents had believed she would bring them pride, but instead, she brought them ruin. And then, years later, my parents tried to come back into my life. It started with an email. "We miss you. We made mistakes. Can we talk?" Then a voicemail. "We didn't realize how much we hurt you. Please, come home for dinner." I ignored them at first, but curiosity got the best of me, and one day, I finally answered the phone. Mom's voice was hesitant, laced with guilt. "We should have never let you go." Her voice cracked. "We regret everything." Regret. Funny how that worked. They had finally seen Emily for who she was. Without me around to be the scapegoat, Emily's true nature had come to light. The endless lies, the manipulations, it had all come crashing down. She had taken everything from them, drained them financially, emotionally, and then left them in the dust. Now, they wanted me back. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't the desperate child craving their approval. I had built a life without them. And I was happy. I let them apologize. I listened to every word. And then, when they finally asked if we could be a family again, all I could say was family isn't something you can pick and choose. I have my own family now. I wasn't cruel. I didn't scream or curse them. I just told them the truth. I had moved on. For the first time in my life, I felt free. On to the next story. My jealous sister tried to sabotage my wedding and disguising it like she's just looking out for me. I found text messages from her talking about her plans to her friends, so I exposed her in front of our family and cut her off for good. I always knew Lucy had a jealous streak. Ever since we were kids, she had a way of making my accomplishments feel small or insignificant. If I got a higher grade, she'd say I had an easy teacher. If I got a promotion, she'd scoff that I only got it because my boss liked me. But I never thought she would take things so far, especially not when it came to my wedding. When I got engaged to Ethan, Lucy was quick to offer her help with the planning. At first, I was touched. Despite our differences, I thought this could be a chance for us to bond. She insisted on helping me choose the venue, the dress, and even the guest list. But it didn't take long for her help to start feeling more like sabotage. She constantly found flaws in my choices. The venue was too small, the dress was too plain, and the guest list was too long. She planted doubts in my mind at every turn, making me second-guess decisions I had been sure about. I found myself feeling anxious, wondering if maybe she was right. But Ethan reassured me, always reminding me that this was our day, not Lucy's. Ethan and I had always been a strong couple. We had met in college, where we bonded over our shared love of travel, books, and deep conversations. He was my rock, always supportive, always kind. When I had bad days, he knew exactly how to lift my spirits. He made me feel loved, cherished, and safe. And Lucy hated that. She would make sly comments about how no man is that perfect or he must be hiding something. When Ethan planned a romantic weekend getaway for us, she scoffed, "Are you sure he's not overcompensating for something?" She tried to chip away at my trust in him, but she underestimated just how much we loved each other. What really set off alarm bells was her reaction to my honeymoon plans. Ethan and I had been dreaming of a quiet getaway to a secluded beach resort. It was our perfect idea of a romantic honeymoon.
But Lucy? She had other ideas.
Are you sure that's a good idea? She'd say with a concerned look. I heard those resorts have terrible safety records. What if something happens? Then she sent me article after article about rare crimes and freak accidents in the area, trying to unsettle me. She even went as far as suggesting an entirely different honeymoon destination, one that she and her friends just so happened to be visiting at the same time.
I started to suspect she wanted to tag along on my honeymoon.
The idea was ridiculous, but with Lucy, nothing was ever too far-fetched. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe she was just being overprotective.
But then, I found the messages.
One evening, Lucy had left her phone on my kitchen counter while she went to the bathroom. A notification popped up, and I caught a glimpse of my name in the preview.
My heart pounded as I opened the chat.
Lucy had been texting her friends about how she planned to save me from making the worst mistake of my life. She bragged about subtly making me insecure about Ethan, about pushing me to rethink my wedding plans, and about how she hoped I'd call it off before it was too late. One message made my stomach drop. If I can't have a perfect life, neither can she.
I felt sick.
All this time, she hadn't been looking out for me, she had been actively working against me. I knew I had to confront her, but I wanted the truth to be out in the open. So, I waited for the next family gathering. As everyone sat around the dinner table, laughing and sharing stories, I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone.
Hey, Lucy, I said sweetly. I found something interesting the other day. She raised an eyebrow.
Oh.
I mirrored her fake smile and read her messages aloud.
Every word rang through the room like a bell tolling a funeral.
The laughter died.
The expressions of my family went from confusion to shock to disbelief.
Lucy's face drained of color as she realized what was happening.
Care to explain? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. She stammered, scrambling for an excuse.
It was a joke.
I didn't mean.
But the damage was done. My parents looked horrified. My relatives whispered among themselves.
Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, a silent show of support. If a constant sabotage hadn't been enough, Lucy decided to take things even further, by trying to seduce Ethan.
It was the ultimate betrayal.
One night, Ethan and I attended a family gathering, and Lucy was there, acting unusually friendly with him. She laughed too hard at his jokes, touched his arm when she spoke, and kept pouring him drinks, even when he said he'd had enough. I watched in growing anger as she leaned in too close, whispering something to him that made him immediately pull away. His expression darkened as he firmly told her to stop. He turned to me and quietly said, "We need to talk.
Now."
When we left the party, Ethan told me everything. Lucy had tried to convince him that I wasn't the right woman for him, that he deserved someone who truly understood him. Someone like her.
I was beyond disgusted.
I felt the final thread of any remaining sisterly bond snap in two. She had been trying to destroy my relationship, but this
was a new level of low. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor.
You've always been jealous, Lucy.
But this
is unforgivable. Her eyes glistened with tears, but I didn't care. I had given her chance after chance, and she had used every single one to try and tear me down.
"We're done," I said, my voice final. "I'm cutting you out of my life for good."
For the first time, Lucy looked genuinely afraid. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She knew there was nothing she could say that would undo what she had done. And with that, I walked away, toward my future, toward my happiness, and away from the person who had never truly wanted me to have it. What did you think of these stories? Let me know your thoughts about them in the comments, and thanks for listening.